Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Fiona, an artist from the Asian Pacifics program, and I'm working with Act to Change. We're trying to find a way to highlight challenges that AAPI youth and working professionals are facing with online harassment. One of the ways that I am trying to help out is to understand the resources available, the campaigns that I can be a part of, and I am interviewing youth and experts on how I'm getting involved and how they're getting involved. Today, I am so excited to be speaking with Act to Change Youth Ambassador Jason Liaw.
Hi everyone, my name is Jason Liaw, and thank you so much, Fiona, for that amazing introduction. So a little bit about myself. I'm a youth author and also a student advocate. I joined the Youth Ambassadorship Program in the fall of 2023, and ever since have been kind of working with Act to Change to advance their mission in stopping AAPI bullying and hate.
That's amazing. You've done a lot already, and I believe you're still in high school, correct?
Yeah, I'm a senior this year.
Okay. It's a huge year for you.
For sure.
Besides school and prepping for more higher education, and you mentioned you are also an author. How did you find Act to Change, and why did you want to work with them?
Right. So I found Act to Change through a local kind of countywide student government organization, and through some of the student advocates that I worked with in respects to advancing financial literacy education and also developing Asian Pacific Islander Desi American pilot programs. We actually kind of connected with Act to Change because we thought that they had many of the similar values that we wanted to teach and kind of help new and upcoming students within our county. So that's how I kind of found out about Act to Change. And I just thought that joining the Youth Ambassadorship Program would be really taking it to the next level and connecting with ambassadors from across the nation, developing kind of a different perspective on what other counties might be doing well that I could potentially apply to my very own.
What was the advocacy work that you did? And can you share with us, what does being Changemaker of the Year mean to you?
Yeah, being Changemaker of the Year truly has made such an impact on, I think, my perspective on, I guess, the work that I've done. And I think starting off from the very beginning, it was more of a trying to connect to my community, especially my Asian community that I had a lot of connections with from a young age, whether it be through Chinese school or doing martial arts. I felt like there was a lot of connections there. And over time, I really felt that my actual community around me wasn't necessarily being represented well in the media. So kind of the first step that I took there was helping local business owners, restaurant owners, and Chamber of Commerce develop a web presence because, as we all know, digital presence is really where a lot of people get most of their information from. And I thought that was kind of the first step in combining some of the things I learned with what really was important to me, which was this kind of heritage and the culture that I had connected with. And kind of following that, it was more of developing the leadership skills, the traits for the future generation of entrepreneurs and business leaders to take after and learn from the stories of those that came before us. And I felt like that was such a great opportunity for me to actually write and become a published author with Down to Business. 51 industry leaders, share practical advice on how to become a young entrepreneur. And just taking those experiences from speaking with other ethnic groups and diverse backgrounds, from small business owners to Fortune 500 CEOs and people from all across the world, that really has opened my perspective to how many of the different paths you can take to entrepreneurship, because there really is no one size fits all.
How long did it take for you to interview all these entrepreneurs and write this book to help other young leaders in developing their future businesses?
We actually started in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic. So as you can see, there were a ton of, I think, negative effects coming from that, whether it was in educational development or the lack of representation or hate bias and media. But one thing that we did kind of get out of that was the opportunity to use Zoom to connect with a lot of these entrepreneurs who maybe had only been accessible through in-person interviews. So kind of taking advantage of that opportunity to speak with all these entrepreneurs through the course of 3 to 4 years was really, I guess, in a way, my development as an advocate and a change maker myself, because over the years I kind of learned from these tidbits of stories that we kind of pieced together, and over time I think really it was the collection and of the, I guess, assembly of all of these different voices from all different perspectives that helped us actually formulate what we wanted to bring to the next generation of students. And so really looking at what we wish we had as youth entrepreneurs, what we wish we had as students growing up in the midst of social media, in the midst of like climate change, the pandemic, all of these factors that have kind of been thrown at us, but really having something to guide us through that. And that's what we were really hoping to provide for the next generation. I think that especially for me, seeing that representation through, Asian entrepreneurs, Asian business leaders was something that helped me actually formulate my own career path and what I wanted to do in the future, because, they definitely are underrepresented, right? We don't see them as often. And that goes to show that, being able to have those people in leadership positions, being able to see yourself in somebody is so important.
100%. And where can we find this resource if we want to read your book, download it, support you?
Sure. So the book is available on Barnes & Noble, Target, anywhere where you can find books. So it's in bookstores nationwide. And we also have an audiobook and ebook, which was, and recording the audiobook was actually one of my favorite experiences throughout the entire process. I mean, you might not like, I definitely wouldn't like hearing myself back, after the recording, but I think doing the recording and feeling like, oh wow, a lot of people would be hearing this and hearing me speak through the genuine questions that I had, how I actually spoke them. It was such a cool experience.
From what I remember when I was speaking with Executive Director Suprita, you received your Changemaker of the Year award at National AAPI Day Against Bullying and Hate, which is every year, May 18th, correct?
That's correct.
Did you give a speech? Were you able to meet with other young activists like yourself there? Share with me a little bit about that day.
I mean, I think that day was, maybe they haven't shared with you, a part that they haven't shared with you is that I actually left prom early to get on a flight from the, kind of the DC, Maryland, Virginia area that I live in. So got on a flight and kind of landed around 12 a.m., slept, and the next morning, we were all there at Ride Back Ranch, which is an amazing facility, by the way. I saw tons of references to amazing films that I'd grown up watching, like the Lego movie, and that was mind-blowing. But it was definitely nerve-wracking at first, kind of being in a conference room with the likes of Ryan Alexander Holmes and even the live action Avatar, right? That was absolutely crazy. Gordon Cormier, both of who are really down to earth and great people. But getting up on stage, accepting the award, giving my speech, kind of recapping, I guess, the last 17 years of what I had experienced and also what I had hoped to bring to the table for the next generation of Asian leaders, Asian entrepreneurs, youth. I feel like that was such an empowering experience, an empowering moment. And kind of beyond that, also seeing how much Active Change had given voice for all of these kind of youth advocates, right? We had a panel of founders and leaders, but we also had a panel of kind of people who were just passionate about developing their voices and kind of silencing that hate, right? Trying to get rid of that, and pushing back against the things that maybe we were told, or maybe that the media portrays us as. And I feel like just that entire experience really encapsulated what I feel like Active Change really does for student advocates, student leaders, and even connecting people who already have platforms, right? Because it's one thing to have a platform, but it's another thing to really use that platform for a change, for a tool to do good.
Wow, I would love to attend the next one for sure. Sounds like a fun time. I went to Ride Back Ranch, I believe last year, but a different time, for a Rotten Tomatoes anniversary.
Oh,
so
wow.
That was really fun as well. What issues do you see still persist today for AAPI youth?
The first thing, I think I have two things here. The first thing I'd say is invisibility. And to kind of elaborate on that, I think the lack of representation, especially in curriculum and in kind of like what we see in schools, is a very pressing issue. Just kind of growing up and not seeing necessarily myself represented in ways that I wish I had been represented in kind of the pictures or the images, especially in terms of history, understanding that culture. And the fact that I had to kind of go to, Saturday school in order to learn more about, what's the history behind everything that I learned, what's my culture really mean to me. I feel like that, as as important as it is to everybody's development, is something that we really need to do better in representing in our schools. And I guess the second part of that is kind of in terms of how we're represented online, right? And I think that has a lot to do with necessarily, the COVID-19 pandemics and the lingering effects of it. But, a lot of it, and this is kind of tied into the capstone project that I actually got to do with as part of my youth ambassadorship. And really, I think, it was a crazy experience because we had used Wikipedia to develop articles, and the thing that they kind of preached to us was that representation online is really your representation through history, and kind of contributing to those articles, giving back, writing back our story, taking control of our narrative instead of letting others kind of write it for us. I felt was such an empowering experience, and it's something that we can really do better as a whole to kind of bring that through.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the biggest ethos from Act to Change is that they believe, as do a lot of us, the solution to harassment is diversity, inclusion, and understanding. What have been your experiences with diversity, and what does that mean to you?
I'll say diversity, I especially living in one of the most diverse counties in America, has definitely been familiar, I think, in terms of my schooling process, everything that I do outside of school as well. But I think especially when you get into more of that like professional world, and I think I experienced this during the publication of my book, I feel like it's often like overlooked. It's an often overlooked concept because sometimes you can get ahead of yourselves in terms of what's a immediate goal that we're trying to achieve, and in the process we kind of leave certain people behind. And I feel like especially with the collecting of certain stories, when we had to reach out to different entrepreneurs, it was so important for us to look at every single angle, for whether you were LGBTQ plus member, whether you were a first generation immigrant, whether you lived overseas and maybe English wasn't even your second language, English wasn't your first language. I feel like these are all things that very much contribute to the development of each and every individual, and is something that we need to recognize. It's something that we need to share, and something that we should be proud of when we're looking at who is making up our community and who is representing us.
And we've had conversations before our podcast today. I remember you sharing with me that you and other student leaders have pushed for more Asian American history in your curriculum. Is that right?
Yes.
How was it, and how did it go?
So there's kind of two different components to that. And the first was, I think, kind of actually being the voice for certain things like this. And I think one big component has been our testimonies to the student, to the education board. So kind of the Montgomery County Public Schools Board of Education. I think for a lot of school districts out there, and I especially heard this during cohort sessions at my youth ambassadorship, right? A lot of times administration and like kind of the leaders within our schools and our education play a big role in how well and also how effective certain pilot programs or how certain voices can actually lead to tangible change. And I think that I recognize that we're really fortunate to have a system where, they are very open to it. But at the same time, it's also important that we kind of press for, kind of immediate action, right? A lot of times it's something that is so urgent that we can't necessarily wait for, the next fiscal year, the next election term, right? This is something that needs to happen now. And I think that is something that I think kind of being a part of this student advocate community has really brought out. And the second thing is really empowering each individual kind of groups of students. And what I mean by that is, for example, Asian student associations in various schools, right? They may not necessarily be under the umbrella of, one large organization like Act to Change, but the mission is aligned, right? So really bringing together each of these schools, each of these clubs, all the people who are very passionate about this and want the representation, but are looking for a direction to channel their passions to, and helping them with that. So, that has really helped us. And pushing for this APIDA, so the Asian Pacific Islander DESI American Studies pilot programs within many schools in our county. So that's kind of this process behind that.
That's amazing. And I feel with that knowledge and information, there is more understanding for classmates around us. In your experience, have you seen bullying happen around you?
I think certainly it is never something that you can really say is going to be gone forever. It's never something that is truly something that you can wipe the slate clean and say that, I've never experienced or seen someone close to me experience that certain thing. And I think a lot of times it's not even necessarily a student. It could even be, a family member. It could even be someone that who is a leader in the community, and even they are receiving hate for just simply speaking up and trying to be a voice for change. So in many respects, I think, bullying is still a prevalent issue, and is not something that we can obviously take lightly, because, it's easy to say that, it's not about your heritage, it's not about the way that you look, but we know that that's not true, right? We know that there's so much that actually goes behind that, and which is why it's so important to be proud of these things. It's so important to be a voice for these things that we've inherited, the voice for things that we can't choose, right? This is all something that we just have. And I think that is something that we need to embrace so that future generations, they can embrace it even easier than we had it.
Absolutely. And how brave of you to acknowledge it and help in the ways that possible. We were talking about how this year is also very important for you because you will be voting this year, right?
Yes. So I'm not of voting age this year, but I will be next year.
Okay. Awesome. What policies do you care about moving forward that will influence your future voting decisions?
I think there's two main clusters, and I think a lot of them very much tie into some of the things that I believe are necessary for schools across the country, right? And the first of which starts with kind of educational equity, right? And what I think educational equity really means for me is inclusive curriculums and access to technology, access to programs that allow people to, I guess, kind of double down on their interests and really bring out certain passions that they have. So having those available, I think, especially in places where, low income communities and places where we don't necessarily have those structures set, is something that is highly, highly important to me. And I think the second thing is school safety. As someone who's been kind of personally impacted by gun violence at schools within my county, and having friends who have actually been in those situations themselves, I think really the violence prevention programs and better training for staff are two kind of very, I think, common sense solutions to what we need to do better as in terms of pushing for safer and inclusive environments, right? The safe being, having students show up every day and know that, nothing's going to happen to them and that they can have a safe space to learn. And the inclusion being that I belong here and I can come to school every day knowing that there's someone or something that is rooting for me.
Yeah. Wow. Super powerful. And it's definitely like an issue that is getting bigger and bigger that I feel like youth shouldn't have to deal with. I'm super inspired by your values as well as the work that you're doing for your peers. And even growing up, it's going to be kind of an everyday thing, right? It's a campaign for change that will take time and energy and effort. I feel that the least I can do is try to understand more, and even talking about it is an advocacy for change. And then when we want to talk about, how do we execute it? That's when our voice becomes so large that a legislator is going to listen to us, and it's actually going to become a policy, right? A public policy. So it's like a snowball effect. And
Sure.
I'm so glad to be speaking with you today. Thank you for sharing so much with us, and looking forward to seeing more work that you will do in the future.
Of course. Thank you so much for taking the time and discussing these topics with me. Thank you. Really.
Thanks, Jason.